Welcome to the biggest Beat the Odds show yet. From Vegas all the way to Germany, we're going to get you ready for Week 10 of the pro football season. Beat the Odds starts right now.
From our Las Vegas studios, this is Beat the Odds, sponsored by SuperBook Westgate, Las Vegas.
Welcome to Beat the Odds. Welcome inside our Las Vegas studio. I'm your host, Dave Hall. Once again, we're going to take the show international for the first time ever. We've got regular season action in Germany. Now, Fat Jack begged the bosses to go. He begged. They reluctantly said yes. So let's see if the big guy is behaving. Here he is twirling through the streets of Munich. Either Jack is very happy to be there or maybe had a couple too many pints. We don't know. We will get some betting advice from Jack, though. Now, back here in Vegas, we have our usual cast of characters. Teddy talking about injuries and how that can change betting strategy. Brandon Marshall will talk about the cutthroat nature of football. And Mariah has a great segment about teams that made big trades and how it changed their betting odds. So let's get it started now. Teddy joining us on the desk, and then about 5,800 miles away or so, Fat Jack is in Germany. Now, Teddy, Jack wanted to wear lederhosen on the show. Thankfully, the bosses said no. Do you think that was a good call?
A very good call for our viewing audience. We appreciate very much the bosses putting the kibosh on that one.
An agreement on that one. Well, let's get this going. Let's send it to Jack with his thoughts on the week.
Guten Tag, guys. We are here in Munich, Germany, because when Tampa Bay and Seattle announced that they're coming to Munich to play, Beat the Odds comes to Munich because it's important to get all of the information if we're trying to beat these games. And, you know, it's interesting. Tampa and Seattle were actually not a random choice to be playing in this game. And the deeper you drill down, you can see this is an obvious spot to be holding a game coming up on Sunday. Germany is an absolute hotbed for the league. When the games are played in London, I noticed this a couple years ago from going to those games, that about 30% of the fans are estimated to be from here in Germany. It all started kind of back in 2015 when the local TV stations here in the country decided to start broadcasting the games. And it's not a mistake or a coincidence that at the time, teams like Seattle and New England were both very, very good. So they were playing deep into the playoffs, and they became the popular team of the different people here in Germany. So they started following these teams, especially Seattle. This is a team that has been very, very popular. It's estimated that about 5,000 or 6,000 citizens here in Germany belong to a fan club with Seattle. And they travel around. They go to the games when they're in London. They travel to the United States. Really, really popular, strong following of Seattle. It's estimated that 1 in 3 citizens here in Germany since 2015 watch one of the games each week. There was just a deal announced with a new TV network that is going to expand the coverage. They're going to start showing Thursday night games, Monday night games as well. So the sport is only growing here in Germany. Very, very popular. And this game between Seattle and Tampa 2.5-point favorite, total of 44, is actually a long time coming for the citizens here, and they're very, very excited.
All right, we'll have more from Jack coming up. First of all, we got to give a shout out to Teddy's wife who cut your hair. I mean, your hair looks fantastic.
Well, she trimmed it because I had to be on air because November gets really, really busy, and it's kind of hard to keep your hair trimmed at times. So thank you, Kara, for getting me ready for the show.
He looks fantastic. All right, we're seeing a lot of key injuries around the league. Teddy, as a bettor, what do you do with that information?
Well, we want to talk about how much players are actually worth when it comes to a point spread. Now, note the difference between the best teams in pro football and the worst teams in pro football can be anywhere between 17 and 20 points based on how good they are in any particular year.
Okay.
So when we're talking about the adjustments, that's the amount in total, in theory, that could be adjusted. So last week, we saw on Sunday Night Football, Kansas City and Tennessee. Tennessee played with backup quarterback Malik Willis. The point spread moved 2 to 3 points off of that particular injury situation.
Versus Ryan Tannehill.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
So the key is not so much how good the player that got hurt is. The key is how good is the backup in comparison to the player that got hurt. So you'll see sometimes the difference between starter and backup can be enormous. Other times, not as much. And
We're
of course,
seeing that this week with Josh Allen. He may not play for Buffalo.
Sure.
And that has already swung the point spread big, right?
Significantly, yeah. We're talking about a 4 or 5 point move with a QB like Josh Allen. But cluster injuries might be the most important thing for bettors to consider. When a group of players at the same position get hurt, it can really derail a team, especially on the offensive and defensive lines.
All right. Thank you, Teddy, for that. We'll be back with Teddy in just a little bit. Key injuries can also leave Vegas Sportsbook scrambling as well. Mariah is at the SuperBook Westgate, Las Vegas with more for us.
Thanks, Dave. I'm here with John Murray, Executive Director of SuperBook Operations here at the Westgate. Now, this week we're talking a lot about players and their value. What do markets tend to react to the most when it comes to player news?
Certainly quarterback injuries, quarterback suspensions. Great example this week, Buffalo, they're hosting Minnesota. That line would be Buffalo -8, 8.5 if Josh Allen was healthy. Looks like Josh Allen might not play. If he does play, he's going to be limited. Right now we've got Buffalo -3.5, again with Case Keenum going against his old team, Minnesota.
And is there a certain position player historically that impacts odds the most?
Well, historically, it's always the quarterbacks, right? For years, it was Aaron Rodgers, it was Peyton Manning, it was Tom Brady. Now it's Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and the next generation, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, and some of the other young quarterbacks that are coming up right now.
Now, at this point in the season, is there a certain player that you think people should maybe keep an eye on in terms of props or futures bets?
I'm going to go with Geno Smith, and not just because I'm a fellow West Virginia University grad. Geno Smith's been great this year. He's got Seattle in first place. They're 6-3 on their way to the playoffs. They play Tampa Bay on Sunday in Munich. Should be a great game. Geno Smith's having a great season.
Yeah, Geno has been a great storyline all season long, but that'll do it from the Westgate. We'll send it back to you in studio, Dave.
All right, thanks, Mariah. If you're a fan of Indy, you guys have had a week, haven't you? Fat Jack says bettors can take advantage of that chaos. Plus, Brandon Marshall gets real with us. We have an eye-opening chat about just how ruthless football can be.
Beat the Odds is sponsored by SuperBook Westgate, Las Vegas.
As we head to break, a fun trivia question for you. After last week's performance, LA Bolts running back Austin Eckler is now tied with 2 others for 10 career games with at least 1 rushing and 1 receiving touchdown since 1950. Who are the other 2? The answer, Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara. Eckler also leads the NFL with 30 scrimmage touchdowns since last season, 6 more than the next closest player, who is Joe Mixon with 24. It's mind-boggling to think that Eckler went undrafted in 2017.
The Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino. Legendary. Vegas. Fun. Enjoy Westgate's classic gaming and entertainment. Savor fine dining. And experience the world's largest sportsbook, Westgate SuperBook. It's all at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino.
Show the world what it means to be a fan at Fanatics.com. The largest assortment of officially licensed college fan gear from more than 500 colleges. Shop now and get today's special offer. Fanatics.com. Officially licensed everything.
You love our show. Now you can get even more from BeatTheOddsTV.com. Betting lines, trends, and analysis of the big games.
The difference between a bad beat and a big win.
Beat the Odds.
Welcome back inside our Las Vegas studio for Beat the Odds. Justin Fields broke the single-game rushing record for a quarterback by racking up 178 yards on 15 carries against Miami, who held the previous record. The answer? Michael Vick. Vick also has the 3rd highest single-game rushing total for a QB at 166. Yeah, Vick could run.
Well, we are back with the great Brandon Marshall once again. Okay, Brandon, we're about halfway through the season. The injuries are starting to pile up. In fact, we saw your finger that looks like a sausage to this day. But it's just the reality of pro football. I mean, guys are going to get hurt.
Absolutely. It's the reality of pro football. Injuries happen, and it's always a next man up mentality, no matter who it is. It could be the best player on the team, it could be the worst player on the team. It's next man up. You know, that's how they treat it. So it's almost like, you know, that's what dehumanizes us in the game, because it's like, okay, you got hurt, you don't matter anymore. It's the next man up.
That is brutal.
It is.
But it just speaks to the brutality of I guess we don't need you anymore. On to the next, huh? Right. So how, in terms of finding that next man up, what's the mentality with each team? Does it change team by team?
I think it changes. I think it's very circumstantial. It depends on if you're winning, if you're a potential playoff team, or if you're not. Because if you're not a playoff team, they're going to go with the young guys. They're going to try to develop, maybe the draft picks or the guys from practice squad. If you're winning, you might try to go get a vet off the street who has experience. Before the trade deadline, you might trade for somebody, right, to try to help your team and boost that roster. So I think it's very, it really depends on the team and the organization as well.
We're hearing a lot of rumblings out of Dallas, perhaps, maybe wanting to sign Odell Beckham Jr. to boost up their offense, which of course he's a fantastic player.
And they can use him.
And talk about how this also affects game plans. If a critical guy gets hurt in a critical position, what does that do for game planning?
Yeah, for example, let's just use Von Miller, for example. When Von Miller's on the field, he wreaks havoc on third down and in the pass rush, right? So you may slide the protection to him, you might chip him with a tight end or a running back. But with Von Miller out, you can kind of play straight up. You can do, they call it big on big. So that means one is 5 O linemen, it's 4 or 5 D linemen or rushers. You just play big on big. But when you have those guys, the game wreckers, the Myles Garretts, the Von Millers, you have to game plan because they'll wreck the game.
That's why those guys are so crucial and so coveted by so many teams. I don't know if you know this, Brandon, but our Fat Jack had threatened to wear a pair of lederhosen today. Thankfully, he was told no. Jack is in Germany to get us ready for the big game there. Jack?
So we're talking about the value of different players in these games and how we can take advantage of that. Another angle to look at is information we get when coaches get fired. It's interesting. Coaches, when they start the season, they really are important to the overall game plan of these teams. So when things go wrong, it's a little bit like when I used to be super fat and I would go sledding with my daughter. We go starting down the hill. It didn't matter if I wanted to stop or not. Once we got to halfway down the hill, we were going because we were going to get wherever we were going. That's kind of the way it is with these teams that fire their coaches. Carolina, now Indy. Carolina started 1-4 and then fired their head coach. They're 1-3 since. Nothing's really changed. They're still not producing. Indy is an interesting one because they were really, really bad offensively with an offensive-minded coach. So they fired their offensive coordinator last week or so. Bust out 3 points, that's not getting it done. And so I expect them to do more of the same. Once you're to this point in the season, it's really difficult to produce offense, especially when you haven't been producing it. Whatever you did in the offseason isn't working. The general thought is that maybe a change at the top will be a different philosophy for some of these teams, but we're going to take advantage of the fact that these coaches being fired really just sends these teams into more turmoil, more unknown, and most likely more bad play, especially offensively. Defensively, especially Indy has been pretty good. So look for these teams to continue underperforming offensively, us be able to take advantage of the under in their games. Indy's been an auto play under even with their head coach. Changing that at the top is not going to do them any good. Changing the offensive coordinator isn't going to do any good. This team's not going to the wishbone. I would not do anything more than play under. So when these head coaches go away, take advantage of the fact that a lot of people think things might change with a different philosophy. That's typically not the case.
All right, good stuff from Jack right there. Thank you. Still to come, as we continue to build this show, we're going to start sprinkling in more college football talk. And Teddy has some great betting tips on that, plus uses the word ballyhooed. That's pretty awesome. And Mariah will show us which team that made big trades also made a big splash in the betting market.
Now to a fun factoid. Which stadium is nicknamed after a Guns N' Roses song? The answer? The Jungle, also known as Paycor Stadium in Cincinnati. The Guns N' Roses song Welcome to the Jungle is the unofficial anthem for the Cincinnati squad. And yes, the stadium's nickname, The Jungle, is also a nod to the team's official mascot.
The Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino. Legendary. Vegas. Fun. Enjoy Westgate's classic gaming and entertainment. Savor fine dining. And experience the world's largest sportsbook, Westgate SuperBook. It's all at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino.
Welcome back to Beat the Odds. What nickname is written on every pro football? The answer? The Duke. The only official game ball the league has ever known. The Duke was named for the game's pioneering legend and New York G-Men owner Wellington Mara, whose father named him after the Duke of Wellington. By the way, each ball is still produced by hand in Ada, Ohio.
Mariah, I got another fun fact about the football. While we still call it the pigskin, footballs are actually made from cowhide leather. How about that? No little piggies involved. For some mind-blowing betting facts, scan that QR code. It will take you to our website, beattheoddstv.com. Well, several teams made big moves at the trade deadline, and the wise guys here in the desert definitely took notice. Mariah has more on that.
The trade deadline has come and gone. We've had enough time to accept the moves made. Now we're taking a closer look at how the futures odds have shifted post-deadline. First up, Miami. When opening lines came out back in February, Miami was 40-1. They moved up to 30-1 before the deadline, and now they are 22-1 to win the whole dang thing. Moving to colder climates, we've got new kings of the NFC North, and all I have to say is skull, baby. Minnesota opened the season with 25-1 odds. 15-1 before the deadline, and not a huge shift post-deadline, which isn't completely surprising, just adding TJ Hawkinson to the offense, but they are now at 14-1. The team with the biggest shift, and rightly so because they made arguably the biggest move in the league, San Francisco. Prior to the deadline, they were 17-1, now 12-1, and in terms of winning the NFC, San Fran's odds shifted from plus 750 to plus 650 at some books. The Gold Rush were out of the top 15 prior to the trade, but thanks to Sir Christian McCaffrey, they are top 10 to win it all. Action on the Bay Bombers has increased quite a bit in the last 2 weeks. And remember when Trey Lance was the starter? LOL at that. Taking a look at the top teams with the best odds to hit the gridiron in Arizona come February: Buffalo plus 240, Philly plus 500, Kansas City at plus 650, and now San Francisco at plus 1200. If any of these lines are appealing to you, remember to shop around because every book has different odds, especially when it comes to futures. They can really vary. We'll keep an eye on how these odds continue to shift throughout the second half of the season and report back, Dave.
All right, Mariah, thank you. Well, up till now, Beat the Odds has only focused on professional football. But as we go on, we're going to start sprinkling in more college football talk as well. And Teddy, of course, you're an expert in both sports. How is betting on pro versus college maybe a little different?
Sure, let's talk about it. Because when the pro football, the public can have some impact on a point spread. In college football, there's no impact whatsoever for any public money. It's all designed, every point spread, every total is designed to beat the sharps. They could care less about public money in college football. Now, when it comes to the hype in college football versus the reality, only the public teams get hyped. You see it every year, you see it every week. You hear about Clemson, you hear about Ohio State and Georgia and Alabama. And that'll be the case this year, it was the case last year, it'll be the case next year. The top teams get hyped and everybody else kind of gets ignored. So you can find some legitimate value on the smaller teams from major conferences and on the smaller conferences in college football. Look, the best point spread teams this year, the top three in college football: Tulane, Kansas, UConn. What?
How about that?
Yeah, you're not talking about the hype teams. You're not talking about the top 25 teams.
The ballyhoo teams?
You're talking about the less ballyhoo teams. 22-4 combined against the spread from that trio of squads, and they're not the only ones. So the less hype squads can absolutely make you money.
Teddy sent me the email and used ballyhooed when describing those big teams. Thank you, Teddy. All right, we're ending big. As always, Jack and Teddy will have their top picks, plus our wheel of keeping it real. See whose head it lands on and what the wheel reveals.
As we head to break, Green Bay's Aaron Rodgers threw 2 red zone interceptions in a game for the first time in his career. Who was the last Green Bay quarterback to do it? Brett Favre, coincidentally. Favre's 2 red zone interceptions were also against Detroit. He did it in Week 15 of 2006. Even with Favre's 2 picks, Green Bay still won that one 17-9.
coming at you from Las Vegas, the sports betting capital of the world.
You love our show. Now you can get even more from BeatTheOddsTV.com. Betting lines, trends, and analysis of the big games.
The difference between a bad beat and a big win.
The interviews, the stories, plus a unique spin on sports history. Your ticket to in-depth content as seen on the show is all at BeatTheOddsTV.com. Check it out today.
All right, welcome back to Beat the Odds Top Pick Time. Jack over our shoulder. He looks hungry for a schnitzel, so we better start with him, Teddy. All right, Jack, what do you got for us?
All right. Play time from here in Munich. It's going early Sunday morning, Seattle, Tampa. Here's the reality. The general public believes that the travel coming all the way overseas will affect the offense. The tired players and all the travel time will affect the offense. Here's what we've seen, though. Defenses have really fatigued on these flights. We saw that with Green Bay back in London, and I think we're going to see more of the same. Tampa's defense, you can tell, is getting tired anyway. They're not playing as well, not holding teams down as much, giving up a lot more yards against some subpar offenses in Los Angeles. I expect them to give up points to Seattle. And the Tampa offense looked a little bit better this last week execution-wise. So I think this game has more points than the general public believes, especially with the early start. Seattle's been an absolute juggernaut offensively, averaging 32 points a game over their last 6 games. They've gone over the total 5 of the last 6, and they are scoring a lot of points. This is not a fluke. This Seattle team, especially offensively, really efficient. So we're going to go over the total early Sunday morning as our top play.
All right, a big thanks to Jack from Germany. How about you, Teddy, your top pick this week? Jack likes an over. I like an over as well. Let's talk about Detroit and Chicago, 48.5. And you do want to check your current weather forecast, but in advance, things look pretty good. Chicago's a dead nuts over team right now. This is a defense that is not going to get stops. They traded away their 2 best players. It's a problematic defense, but offensively, all of a sudden, it's an emerging offense. They're making plays. Justin Fields looking good. He looked great last week, and not for the first time. And Detroit, I know they made turnovers and got interceptions in the red zone last week, but Green Bay moved the ball up and down the field against them, just like every other team has done against Detroit all year. Good offense, bad defense from both teams. We'll look at Detroit and Chicago over the total. All right. Like that delivery, by the way. All right, we're going to finish up with our wheel of keeping it real. It's our Vegas-style slot machine with our 5 heads spinning around. So let's do it. Let's spin that bad boy and see who it lands on this week. Round and round it goes, and we got Teddy. All right. What will you reveal today, my friend? Well, we've been talking a little college football on the show. Let's talk a little college football right here. I'll give you guys a play for Saturday night that I like. All right. Oregon State minus 13.5 against Cal. And again, we're talking about one of the less hyped teams with Oregon State that has been covering spreads all year. You can stick a fork in Cal. They're done. Lay it with the Beavers. All right. Sounds good. Big thanks to Jack, Teddy, Brandon, Mariah, and all of you guys watching from home. Good luck this weekend. We'll see you again next week on Beat the Odds.